Live. Hey everyone, welcome back. You didn't check the update video, we just did it. You don't have to check it, but we just did that. Sorry it's been so long again. Again, this is for YouTube. If chat could say something just to make sure I'm live again, that would be great. I don't want to like activate the stream and then you get the echo. I am bad at streaming, right? So like, just deal with it. Check in here. We're doing okay. Hey, thanks. We live. Thank you. Cool. So I'm excited. People seem to really like these environments. One of the main things that like kept Steel Calibur Slayer from like progressing was like my dissatisfaction and just like general lack of know-how on doing environments. I just hated everything I made. The texture work was like really complicated. But I have learned a lot and I've like really streamlined the process. And early on, I tried to use light mapping and baking lighting, and I always crashed. But for whatever reason, it works now. It's the same PC. Redacted years later. I'm not gonna say it out loud. You can do the math. So yeah, these are the environments we're looking at. It's like this waterworks area. It's pretty bag. Again, the production value is like really, really low. Oh, I should have brought her over here first so we could run around real quick. As I do some of this like intro stuff. And again, I'm really sorry if I don't read the chat. I'm bad at it. I really do like answering questions during it, but I just forgot. So just see it in motion here. I'm pretty proud of this place. It turned out pretty cool. Sorry, spoilers. Owie! There's, bang my hand. There's some just extra stuff here because I'm still like blocking out this area. And yeah, you could actually, I'll just right away, I'll say that all these lights are baked, like every single one. If you set it up right, I could probably get away making these all real time because they're not very big. And you can see there's a little bit of weirdness going on there. The light baking is really low resolution because I'm like developing the environment. So when it's on the final build, we'll up the resolution and I'll get into all that. One of the main things about this, you hear these warnings at the beginning of every video, like this is how I do it. This is my process. And so yeah, same sort of disclaimer. This is how I do it. One of the main reasons I do it the way I do, because it makes building levels just super fast. If you want more detailed environments, there's other tutorials. On the sort of basic level, it's really similar to how you'll see like other tutorials. But I want to give a huge shout out. Well, I'm going to check chat real quick. Let's see. We live, Yas. Oh, thank you. Oh my God, Andrew. I love you. I miss you. It's so nice of you to see you. Everyone say hi to Andrew. So, I lost my train of thought. It was just really nice to see him. Oh my God. Yeah, let's go here. So, the Twitter questions, we'll do that later. The big shout out I mentioned is Trails of Cold Steel. I've actually done a video on this. I've done a tutorial video on how I do my textures and in how I sort of the methodology of my environments. But I've learned a lot since then. And that was maybe one of my worst videos. The texture video isn't. It's one of my favorite videos. I guess I just need to do another one so people get it. Because it's really similar. And I guess it was seen out of context. I don't know. But definitely the methodology video is like my worst video. It's just very abstract. You don't see it in context or in practice at all. And so we're going to be doing that. So Trails of Cold Steel, one of their main things is they create things that are very square on a very strict grid. I don't want to like expose Twitter real quick. Have it open up. And again, I covered it in that video, but if you look up like Trails of Cold Steel and see their environments, They're very Lego-like. They're very big and blocky. I like in this, and this is gonna sound a little derogatory, but in the end, it looks really good. It's like RPG Maker maps. They're very basic, but that's why I like it. And then you can sort of dress them up from there. Just being able to create this big foundation, create these big shapes that give you nice feelings, and then you can work from there and add like details and props and things like that. So, thinking about going over these real quick, and then we'll get into modeling. Yeah, and then texturing, we'll just go through it. It's going to be a little bit haphazard. I'm going to try and stay like go through each subject, but I don't know what's going to happen as I work on it. So, yeah, the methodology is, I'll just read a bit. Main appeal is its simplicity of building. So when we actually get to development, it's just way easier. It was one of the huge things. It was just like so stressful to build environments because things weren't like fitting together. But in this, you sort of cover all your bases. There's tons of overdraw, but that's like why it's great because you can just sort of slam everything together and it looks great. And it's like using Legos. Shout outs to Thu on Twitter. Amazing Thu. I don't know, I just love him. He's just a good game dev friend, I feel. And he has a love of JRPGs too. And anyway, he's helped me a bit. So you can think of just trying to think how to start. I'll show how I do it already, and then we will get into actually applying it. So the basic overview is like we have like a floor tile, and then we have like a pillar, let's say, and then a wall, and you can see these are unbaked now and they're all flat and weird. Think of it like a grid, right? And so you have this like top-down grid. All your pillars are going to be on like the crosses of the grid, right? If we had this, right? Oh gosh. This is our grid. You can think of, all these squares in a grid. And all your pillars will always be placed here. And then your walls will always be on the edges. So that might seem basic. But along with that, we start adding like trim. And so one of the like core components of it is just these like 4 pieces. So if you look at those like Trail of Cold Steel example, there's this like in the first one, I haven't actually played it, but like I don't think it is actually a game for me, but I love their environments. They have this like dungeon area in the first area, and I think you revisit it, but it's basically just this. It's these ground tiles, and then a wall tile, and then like a pillar, and then these. What's nice about these, I call them pillar caps. You can use them as like just the caps of a pillar here, and then like we add, let's say this trim right here. Let's see it without it. So that already can be kind of cool. Then we add this pillar cap, and like it just, whenever you have certain aspects like crossing each other, it is a place where you can use these like pillar caps. And they go and do like a ton of work. So if we look actually like over here, they're what help you sort of cover up like all the places where things intersect. So if we have these like railing pieces, oh my gosh, get out of the way, please. If we didn't have this like cap, then we would just have this, right? And we have like Z fighting and things like that. By having that piece and by making it really big, and we'll get into that when we start developing it for real, it lets us get away with a lot. And you can see, again, there's tons of overdraw, and it's like, I don't care. Like, this game runs perfectly fine on this older PC. Yeah, sorry, it's still really abstract. This is gonna be a very long video. I don't know how many hours we'll do today. We might get through it all, but yeah, let me check the chat real quick. It'll become more clear as we start developing it. Oop. Twitter link and Twitch. Oh yeah, probably. Oh, that's smart. It is. Like, just go look at Trails of Cold Steel. It basically, like, when we start, like, actually building the level, you're gonna see, like, you can just start sticking stuff together and everything just fits. It's, like, amazing. Yeah. So, let's look at here. Think of the world like a grid. Walls are placed on the lines of the grid. Pillars are placed on the crosses of the grid. Ceiling and floor tiles are placed on the squares of the grid. Pillars and caps and posts are uniform in a lateral direction. So that means laterally as in like in Unity in Y and X direction. Oh, excuse me, Y and Z. Sorry, I was looking at the local one. Let's do global. X and Z, this is what I meant to say. Which means, it's just a fancy word of saying it's square. This one's like scaled up. And that way you can just sort of place them everywhere. You might see like pillars that are like in other games, sort of have this like flatness to them. And you kind of get it anyway, just because it's in the middle here. It's the same thing for walls. I actually do them just like essentially like, you know, 0 thickness. If you wanted it like super, oh gosh, I'll explain it when we're building it. But basically you can do the same thing with the walls. You would just make them a little bit thick and you'd make them like 2-sided. And then they'd be more like this, if that makes sense. And you might even make it so there's like a face here, so everything's just cubes. Again, it's really abstract. We'll get into it. Edge trims and walls, if you like, are mirror projected front and back, but strictly bound to their size. So it's easier to explain visually. Again, we'll get to it. I guess I covered that. Pivot points should be on the crosses of the grid. So that's why they're on right here. It makes it easier for when you're doing things like the trim to just keep things in place, like when you rotate it. And you can get into trouble like when we start doing our arches, because if our pivot wasn't right here, like if we put it in the middle, when we're building the stage and we're using snaps, it's just not very fast. You have to do these readjustments. You can get things where you have to like go in and, you know, reposition it or like do a calculation. My snaps are on 6. It was supposed to be 8, but then my environments got way too big. So put your snaps on power of 2. We're going to cover that again when we get started. Let's see. Feeling is desired. Oh yeah. So I keep them like really small numbers, like in Blender. Like these are like 1 by 1. These floor tiles, they might be 2 by 2. I can't remember, but I think they're 1 by 1. And then we scale them up like in Unity, and we'll get to that. Yeah. So the actual models. This format's generally enough for a whole environment. Like this is like what we have here, like a wall and a floor and a pillar, and then like a pillar cap. And then you do like a trim here. And again, we can use these if you didn't notice. You design a lot of these assets for being used in different places. So, and they take on different character based on how much is exposed. This is actually like an alternate one right here, so I cheated, but yeah, so you can see that looks really nice, right? The same piece used 3 different ways, because it's just like the floor, it's like the edge trim, like for the floor, the wall, and the ceiling. And then you can think of the pillars as like the trim of like a cube, like if the whole environment's just made out of like blocks. I think you get what I'm getting at. Whenever you have an edge, then you use a trim. So if we're blocking out our whole stage like this, whenever we have an edge, we use a trim. So here we'll need a pillar. And then, against the wall here, we might want it. And then we do those caps whenever we have those corners. That's basically the methodology. Just like that. Yeah. Let's see. So the assets I generally do are, I start with the floor and I start with the wall, like when we're trying to design it. I'm gonna go over this really quick and then we'll get into it. I know I keep saying that, but like for real this time. And then you do the pillar and an arch. The arches can do a lot. They're really decorative. You can do sort of different types of arches. These are literal arches, but like if you're doing like a more modern environment, you can do just like an entryway type arch in quotes, but it's like rectangular or whatever. They do a ceiling. Don't be shy about just reusing it. A lot of times I just use my wall on the ceiling because the ceilings get really dark and you look up at them and there's like a big light like shining down on you, and so it extra obscures the ceiling, so it's like, who cares? Floor trim is just like a little extra one that you can do. On top of the actual edge between two assets, like let's say a wall and a floor, we have this trim here, but then starting here to give it a little more, we can start doing trims like this. I meant to load this stage earlier. Don't lag. It's lagging a little. So here's another stage where I use that trim like a lot more. It can just give a lot of character. Some stages, that trim can be used more aggressively, I guess. But I also don't do the thicker trim like right here. So that was sort of the quality I gave that other environment where it sort of has this trim right here. From like, I don't know, it also looked bad, the one that I had like right here. I might fix that, but yeah, just make everything snap. It's really good. So I'll load this. And we will get started, and we'll just go through and design our own little environment here. And then once we get into texturing, it will, we'll move on to that. I don't know why I said that. Let's see, let's load up Blender. Apologies in advance, I use older versions of things. This is 2018 Unity. I still use old Blender, partly because I don't want to learn it, partly because I don't like the UI. We've heard this a million times. And mainly because my computer wasn't having a good time running it. We can actually load up this one. And we can kind of see them all in context. So you can see, generally start with the floor. Where's my wall? Oh, she's over here. And then a wall, and then the pillar. They usually start pretty basic. Then we start texturing them. You can see how basic the texture is. There's actually like some redundancy that I could fix. At first, they all just use this texture, and it looks pretty good. But then I wanted a few that were like a little more fancy, like this. So I wanted some of these edges to be a little bit nicer. Yeah. So we can. I'm trying to think the best way to start. Oh, delete all that stuff. Oh, I meant to turn on the. Oh well, I'm not gonna fix it. Right here. So we added a plane. I'm not gonna do the typical play-by-play of everything for Blender. It's just, I don't have it in me today, I guess. Often I do my best to like play-by-play, you know, Shift D, Control S, and all this stuff. You to unwrap? Maybe I will. So we will, excuse me, scale everything down, please, I beg. Oh, whoops. I generally, what's your problem? Split everything up like this. This seems weird. Oh. So it's like 4x4. And like work from there. So we will just go ahead and make this plane our first ground tile. So we'll call it cut ground. And it's really important at this stage, especially like you're working in Unity, but probably any project, name your meshes, have a naming convention. So what I usually do is the first word is like the environment. So it'd be like Undercity or like Subway or, you know, whatever. I couldn't think of any. We'll just do tutorial for now. And I don't do underscores. I just do like tut for tutorial, ground, and then I do A and then 1. And so the A is like the alternate. So let's say we have like a brick floor and then, you know, like a tiled floor. And so the tiled floor would be B. And then the numbers are going to be alternates for that like texture, if that makes sense. We'll do an example when we get to it. So the chat, hello. Use a sharpening filter on textures. It's just how I paint them. You can do that. I know a lot of artists do that. Oops, place. That's a great question. I don't, but you can definitely do it. So basically we just unwrap this and put it here. If you're unfamiliar, like again, it's sort of basic Blender stuff. It's not necessarily the time to like cover it. And then we will go to object mode and Shift D and just copy it. That way we can just drag this, and I've already made a mistake. Except forgot to put the pivot on the corners, like I said. We'll do that really quick. So now our pivot, you know, the origin point in Blender is where your pivot will be. And we'll just call this tutorial model A1. And we will grab it here, snap it over a few, that way it'll be here in the texture. And so I'll get to one of the questions here. I asked everyone to ask questions on Twitter, and it is, I wrote them out because I didn't want to put people's info up on stream. What do you use as inspiration or ideas for creating environments? So I generally have like a single location that inspired me in real life. Like the Waterworks one is just like, honestly, like the biggest inspiration is probably like Big Shell from like Metal Gear Solid 2. I mean, I think I'm not alone in thinking that's beautiful. I mean, in like Metal Gear Solid 5, they used, you know, Outer Heaven basically looks like Big Shell. That sort of industrial, sort of like aquatic, like look, like mixed together. Is really beautiful. And yeah, basically I just have that. And then I think of like a single location that I think is like really beautiful. And I think of like all the assets I might need for that. And just sort of work from there. So today's inspiration, I don't have a good picture. It's just sort of that like I don't know. It's really American. I guess it's not necessarily American, but it's like it's brick, but like red brick, but kind of darker, with like metal accents, if that makes sense. I just picked one that would be easy to think of, and we'll just like go through it and see how it looks, and then we might change it as we develop it here. So probably want to do a pillar. Let's go ahead and just start laying out our texture. So let's save this. That. And often what I do for my textures is just duplicate it here in Unity. Because there's going to be a lot of like gradient maps I like and some like textures that I reuse. There's a really deep, dark secret here that I mentioned it in the other video, but it's like, it's really kind of gross, but I like it. I basically use the same texture throughout the whole game. Hopefully this won't lag too bad. I do use Photoshop. I'm going to go through the sort of steps here that I do for an environment. I've said this a lot, like even in other videos, but like layer styles, layer styles, layer styles, like that's all it is. People might think it's a little cheesy. If you style it right, it'll look like your own hand. I had a friend, like right out of like school, he was doing that, and I thought it was whack. But then, like, I don't know, I was wrong. It's so fast, and like, I give this example a lot, but look at Dragon Quest XI. If you look at it, even like the updated textures in the American version, it's like you just see the layer styles everywhere. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's just in Unity, or excuse me, in Photoshop. It uses distance fields. This is a whole nother topic, but basically creates effects that make it really easy to make environments, or to do all sorts of like crazy cool stuff. So let me clean this up. We have the wall here. Good, I have it all on that layer so I can delete everything else. Okay, leave that. So I have this wall here, and I usually section it off as like its own little thing here, its own folder. That's the word. Sorry, I'm just a little frazzled. Up in Blender. Oh, that's right. So we'll change that. We'll move the wall over here. Oh, that one didn't get unwrapped, I guess. Or maybe I just forgot to set it. Okay, whatever. And we'll drag that down here. So now I have our wall and our ground. And let's just texture a bit, like get some ideas. See what we want. So my methodology for, I'll keep that. Actually, I'll keep that other one. Oops, I was doing Control Z instead of Control Alt Z. Is I start with like a base and it's just like gray. Just like that. And I do a sort of like feelings texture. And that is this cement texture here that I found, and I paid for it. This is the one I literally use on everything in this game. There's like another like metal texture that I use, but literally all these textures use that same one. And you can see it now, it's like kind of gross, but no one knew till I said it. And we just put that on here and we set it to an overlay. And that's gonna let us work underneath it, and this texture will just sort of live over the top of it and it just gives it this really nice like tactile feeling. And you'll see, and then from there I use layer styles to sort of like create the actual texture. So like I mentioned, we're gonna do brick. So let's just start like making some bricks. We'll kind of do fatter bricks. It's gonna be sort of smaller. You don't have to super worry about tiling. Like you can kind of like go in and fix that later. A lot of my textures kind of have like some seams and like I just don't care. So what I do here is I set like an outer glow. You can do like bevels and like technically might look nicer, but like sometimes like non-realistic things will look better. That's why I do like the outer glow, because it like sort of gives an edge to both sides, even though it's sort of like a fakey like lighting. I don't know, maybe because it looks more like an illustration, like that's why it's better. I don't know. Check the chat real quick. Dirt grime layer is cool. How did you come up with it? I just bought it, just looked. No, I'm here for questions. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like that's the methodology. That's like exactly it. That's the perfect question, because we take this very real texture, and if we threw that in the engine, like, oh, I didn't save it yet. So Control S in here, and then in Blender, make sure you're in the UV zone, and then hit Alt R, like just hover over here. Now it's like, you know, very old PC game, where it's just like photographed textures. And looks really bad. We'll set up a quick scene here. I didn't mean to do that with objects. That's my bad. Well, it doesn't matter. You know, people just use like photographs or whatever, and I'm using photographs, right? Like, but they like just do that. And so what we do is we grab that to give it that tactile sort of like realness, and then we go in and put our hand over it. And even though these layer styles are really sort of mechanical, they give us a lot of character, and like you can still express your style through it. And you can just not do it too. Like you could just hand paint it if you wanted. Yeah, so even like for this, I will often grab another texture online. I'll just search like free brick or free tile or whatever. And sometimes I'll just plop it right on top of it. I might clean it up so it's less gritty. Or I might just copy the pattern, right? We're just gonna do a quick brick here. We'll see how it looks, and if I hate it, we'll do something else. Just sort of thinking, this part might be a little bit slow. I think I'll do what I said I was gonna do. And we'll do like brick texture like this. And this is where it can get kind of like mechanical looking, but like, and also if you do Control Alt grab, or if you do Alt with the Control tool, you can duplicate. And if you have a selection, it will duplicate those pixels rather than like the whole layer, because right now it makes like a whole layer. Check this out. Doesn't quite what we want, but we'll adjust it. And you're gonna do lots and lots of adjustments as you like make the environment. And this looks whack, right? Like this is garbage, right? But oops, we don't need you anymore at the moment. Now we have this, right? Look at them bricks. And if you don't know, opacity will do your layer styles and your pixels like on the base layer. Fill is just the pixels on the base layer. So then we can do like an outer glow, and we will do black here. And then like an inner glow. Bring it down a bunch. Please. That, and already we have like, I don't know, it looks mechanically, but it also looks like it has like the touch of someone's hand, in my opinion. So then we have that. And that already has like way more texture, way more character, right? It looks cartoony, but like in the way that we want. And it's going to be up to you to decide, right? But it's just so fast to be able to like do this. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. So then the final step that adds like a lot, is to use gradient maps. And what gradient maps do is they take the, value of the layers beneath it and map them to a color, a gradient here, and we'll set that. And if you don't know, technically if we did black to white here, it should be exactly the same. And I make this comment because I just find it fascinating. But as I turn it off, you can see it's slightly different. That's because it uses a smoothing here. So for these gradients, sometimes it can look nice. You can just leave it on. It basically is just creating an S-curve as it goes along here, is my guess. So you can just turn the smoothing off if you want it like super precise. Whoops. So go in here. Like I mentioned, I want sort of like a red brick. We might like go for something else. That can be kind of pretty. That'll take us a bit. And this is almost a step up, but it looks really gross, right? It's like, this is like lesson number 2 on when you're learning lighting, is to do like a hue shift. That's why gradient maps are so nice, because then we can shift the hue down here, make it cooler. It's subtle, but it looks a lot better already. We even like desaturate it a bit. We'll move these around a bit. And we'll add some warmth to this highlight here. Oh, see, now we got like a real texture. That looks good. Go in here. So now we have something, a lot more character. It looks like something we actually designed. And copy this, and copy this. And if we go right here in Unity, we can do tut. That'll bring up the ones that we made. And so you can see it's too tiny. We need to set our scaling in the Blender model. There it is right at the top. Do 16, that's just the one that I set for my project. And we need to generate light map UVs. We'll hit apply. It'll be bigger, but it's still gonna be like the wrong. Oh yeah, so these must be like, oh, they are 2x2, that's my bad. Excuse me. Boop. Do that for the wall too. Bring those down. I'll delete this for now. And we have one final thing missing. We didn't make a material for it. Yeah. Let's duplicate that. Again, named it well so we can search for it easily. And then we'll drop that on our objects in here. So now we can start building in here. And we'll just lay some stuff out. So we can kind of like decide on like what we want from the environment. Generally, like I mentioned, you know, you think of like a specific like photograph or like place that maybe you visited, and you sort of block that out. And I'll often like block it all out in here and sort of unwrap it in here. It'll go back and forth, and it depends on the object or the environment as to what sort of direction you take. Like some room right there. This brick is kind of boring, but we're gonna make it fancier. So I wish these were like skinnier this way, so I'm gonna do that. This is why we use layer styles, because then it's just like, you don't have to be good. So let's see, the next step for this, I'd be like, grab the inverse of that selection. So control click right here, not right here. This will select the layer. This will select the pixels. So control click, and then control shift I to select the inverse. And then on our gradient map, probably like delete some right here. And now we have kind of like, it's too light back there. So we're gonna do something different. I'm gonna lower the value in our base here. So it's like darker. Oh my god, that was a misclick. And then on the bricks, we'll actually bring that back. So then we can like sort of adjust these independently. And now we have some nice like variation in the color and things like that. I don't love this environment, this texture, but it looks okay, I guess. It takes a while to just like make it look good. Maybe it's just the color. I hate it. I thought it would look nice, but oops. I don't know. I kind of hate that. But we'll try one more thing. Select the inverse again. And we'll go really dark. Looks okay. Looks a little bit better. You'll be surprised, like if you look at Final Fantasy 12, having like the white in between each brick can look so pretty, but it can create like a lot of busyness. So a lot of times they'll just go with like black in between, even though it's not quite accurate. It's just like way easier on the eyes. So yeah, something to keep in mind. I'm sorry, I just like hate this color. Maybe we'll do it. That's kind of pretty. A little too dark, but it is pretty. I'll just go with the dark brick, even though I've done it a million times. This is another reason why I like copy the gradient maps over, because finding like natural ones that just like look nice is like kind of hard. It's a little too dark. And you'll be surprised, like, because of the baking, we're gonna want it like a lot lighter. Sorry if this part's a little bit boring. I don't know, this is like frustrating me a little bit. So I might just go back to one of our old textures and sort of update that. Basically the same process. Oops, if you didn't know, like it keeps your like very original, even if you run out of like undos, if you click up here, you can go to like when it was loaded. And yeah, you can get, it'll just be there. But I don't know, I don't want to give up hope. I'm a little frustrated. So I think the brick would look nice, but maybe it's too big. do this. It's nice in a way. That better. I think I can survive like that. Sorry I got so quiet. I just got a little frustrated. I haven't streamed in a while, y'all. Sorry. And honestly, I think it's like there's not much to this. Like people think it's like more, and it's like, yeah, that's it. So I'm just adjusting a little here. Nice. Much better. So yeah, that's a cool environment. That's a lot cooler. And we'll adjust the contrast a little bit here still. Like losing my voice already. Should push this smaller. Like I mentioned, if you do a selection and then alt drag, you will select all those pixels. And then you can like keep it on that layer. And you can see like the seams are there and it looks really bad, but I don't care. When you bake it, it'll help it. And finally, you can actually adjust it. And I'll show you how to do that when we get to it, but I don't care too much right now. Adjust the contrast on this just a little bit more. I want it a little bit lighter. It's gonna be nicer. And I also just want to yeah, the gradient maps are like so nice. I want to show you the other way. I was gonna do it for the floors, but you can also just like straight up like I'm gonna show you an alternate way of doing it. Find a brick texture that you like. This one's kind of nice. Ooh, that's kind of nice. This is one where it's like black in the middle more. You know, look up free ones, but I'm just doing it like this because it's fast. And that feels like the feelings that I'm feeling about this environment. I swear last time I looked this up, it was near the top. We could try that. It's pretty uniform, but it has like a little bit of character. Actually, it has kind of a lot of character. We're just gonna copy that. Don't tell my mom or the cops. We're gonna paste that in here. Again, like if you're using a texture full on, like please buy it, or use a free one. We'll just lay that over the top. And because of the gradient maps, like it takes on a lot of the character that like it feels like you sort of drew it. We're gonna actually, what is it? I forgot what desaturate is. Control Shift U, that's right. So we'll desaturate it. So that way this is a grayscale. You can have that. And it looks weird, but when you bake it, it can look really nice. And then the final thing we can do is like you can adjust the levels to make it sort of match your style a bit, or to maybe eliminate like some aspects that you don't like. Like you'll blow out like the whites and the darks. That way it's a little more like stylized. And from there, you might have to like readjust it if you took that path. It a little. Too much. May have blown it out a little bit too much. We're kind of losing some of our values. Also, this is pretty dark. Better. Pop up the saturation on this. Ooh. Ooh. A little bit too much there. Yellow. It can be nice to really push it though. Like having that shift in hues like is so nice. Let's see, we're all excuse me, like way in the blue on this one. More green up here. It's so, ooh, that violet, are you kidding me? Pretty nice. And if you, I meant to have these, I couldn't find them. I don't know where I put them. I did some like Final Fantasy 12 texture rips on the like the original PS2 one, and a lot of them just look like straight up like this. And then what they'll do partially is like you can add like decorative details and things like that. And what I personally do at times is on top of this, let's say this is our like texture, make a new layer, and we'll do a similar layer style. So on our inner glow, because we're going to be making like cracks, we want black on the inner glow, and then outer glow, we want white. And we sort of redraw what we see. And, oh, shape dynamics on. This will let you literally like put your own hand into the texture. It can be time consuming, but it's also like incredible looking. Like, try and zoom in here. Like you can tell it looks like it's like getting more stylized. It's kind of like adding like a literal black outline, like if you were doing like character art. And it can take a bit, but it can look really good. Or if you have a way to just select this, you know, like doing color selection or value selection. Like I mentioned, it's time consuming, but like it looks really good. Zoom out. It's hard to tell there that means anything, but you can see it's sort of getting there. It looks like we drew it. It's like cheating. And so I do that a lot. Like once you start adding your own hand on top of these like natural textures, it starts to look like really amazing. Let's see. Oh, like where is it? Cool. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna just, I was gonna say, I'm gonna bake real quick. I don't bake in that sense. Move this scene. And we're gonna bake real quick just to see like how our lighting is just sort of looking and our texture looks under the lighting. So if you look over here, these have a lot more like cartooning-ish to them, which is the style we're actually going for. So we kind of want to test that, see where we're at. So make sure they are light map static. Generally, if it was already static, it'll become light map static. Scale and light map, can you go higher than 1? Oh, heck yeah. So if you have important details, you can make them bigger. Actually, I haven't done that yet, but what I have done is make their light map scale 0. So if you have like a lamp post, sitting right here, you may want the ambient occlusion to affect like the ground around it. But this might get like too like splotchy because it's kind of a detailed model. So I would make its scale 0 in the light map. And other things I would just take out of the light map, like that where the emissive is, I generally like take it out. Just something to keep in mind. So how do you do that? Well, that thing I mentioned, you know, on the model itself, the file rather, you need to make sure you're doing generate light map UVs because it uses the second set of UVs to bake in light maps. And there's all sorts of settings here. You're gonna hear this and you're gonna hate it. And when I heard it, I also hated it. But I don't know what else to tell you. You kind of just have to experiment, and it sucks because it takes a second. Like that's why we made the scene really small. A good setting is like 4, and it's still like not too fast. Like a smaller environment might only take like a minute or so. And newer PCs it might be better. Let's just run it. Let's just generate the lighting and see what happens. So that's what we get. You'll notice some changes. It's a lot lighter, right? We have indirect intensity. And where is it? And we have the indirect contribution. I suppose I should just go through it. We'll go through everything. I'm kind of losing my breath here. I'm a little... Too many things on my mind. I don't quite know what the difference between the light map and indirect resolution is. So I usually just set them the same, but basically you have your direct lighting, and then you have your indirect lighting, which is a little more like bounce, I guess, and your ambient occlusion and stuff. But the resolution is how long it's going to take. Like I mentioned, 4 is pretty good. Padding helps with artifacts because what the light maps look like are this, right? So we have these light maps. Oh, I thought you would let me zoom in. But it's just a bunch of splotches, right? And if there's no padding, sometimes those splotches can carry over to textures. You know, let's say if this wall was like this little square right here, and this wall was right next to it, without the padding, you can get some bleeding, basically. Pretty much. It's like we're letting this just do everything. So I would also like to mention that once it's baked, you can go in and make changes to the texture, and it will update okay. It'll keep that other UV set. So I just duplicated that whole group. Ground. Sorry, I'm holding back laughter because I was gonna say something and just reminded me of something else that's really funny, and it's not. Explaining it isn't funny, so I guess I should mention that too. You can see how nice it looks. Like once you've like traced like that texture, excuse me. It looks really nice. Even just like in here. So you can use those textures. And in that case, I feel you don't have to pay for it. I don't know what the law says, so but I feel like it's transformative enough that it doesn't really matter. Just take a glance at that in the scene here. I know it's just a small spot, but if we carried that over through the whole thing, it could look really nice. Leave this in for now. We'll decide what to do later. Anyway, as mentioned, it'll update and keep the light map here. Have some issues here. Scale that down just a little bit. You can see we went out of our bounds. I do my best to stay within this like 4x4 here, but it's whatever. Already that looks like really nice. Like that can turn into something pretty cool. Already that's like kind of stylized, and you can do that where it's like the texture isn't like totally flooded across everything, where it like fades in and out. You have lots of options, especially if you're doing, this is for some mega basic stuff. Like I mentioned, it's like RPG Maker. It's just very basic. Normally, like I do like literal tiles here. You would want like a tileable material that would just tile these across no matter what you did. You'd have multiple textures you could like lay in to do effects like this, but again, I like how easy and basic it is. So. Sorry, I'm losing my voice really bad. That happens like every stream, but like extra. I haven't spoken in a while. Excuse me. So yeah, and now I'm getting a vibe, right? It's like when I first made this environment, like I didn't know what colors I wanted, and I tried a bunch of stuff, and it like fit, but it didn't give me a vibe. But now I'm getting a vibe, and like I'm feeling better. So it's gonna be a little bit boring, but I'm gonna texture this a little bit more so that it just looks better when we're going forward here. It's gonna be really fast, but well, sloppy rather. I don't know how fast it'll be. Line right here. Try and bring up some other topics as I do it. Oh, and hello to the Lab Zero person in there. If you're still in here, I didn't mean to ignore you. There's just like other stuff on my mind. It's great to see you. Normally, sort of like controlling your pen pressure as you go across. It's hard to do it and maintain this. You can hold shift to make a straight line, but we'll give you more character, right? So, and like not just doing a perfectly straight line across will look better, but worry that this will literally take way too long. Thought I could do it like really quick. Having regrets. I didn't realize how tiny this texture was. Like how tiny the bricks were. Do that thing I said. The lightest stuff. We will see how this looks. Terrible. Yeah. Well, in a blessed world, we would go through and do all of this. I'm going to try and cheat a little bit, and we will. Do a section and then duplicate it. I want to get to the pillars. It's like when it gets really fun and pretty and like but the nicer textures that we have, the nicer look going forward. My fault for picking such a cool texture. Another part about this sort of little technique that I like is to add even more character. You can like add cracks and things. A lot of times that's like all I do. So instead of like totally like outlining this, I'll add cracks and such. My voice is like resonating like so hard in this room. Normally pretty good at like drawing cracks, but these turned out garbo. And just finding ways, like this may not, you know, tiled together like this, it looks kind of bad, but you can see even more how much the touch of your own hand along with these textures just like makes it next level. See how it looks when we just terribly terrible. Man. She said she wouldn't do it. Here we go. We'll do that thing I said where we just do it like certain parts. When you're on YouTube, feel free to fast forward through this. Don't hurt my feelings. And we're gonna spice up this wall in a few different ways. But I just want like a little bit stronger of a foundation. Oh, that looks nice. Better than I thought. A little bit too cartoony. We might like put that down a bit. Ooh, now we got more violets like coming in. Yeah. Looks good. Oh, cool. Hey. Good, I'm glad. So, one little thing I'll do is like have sort of like a, are they called baseboards? I don't know, but like we can do that. But I'll give you two sort of options for doing it. So let's go in here. We'll do Shift D, A, and we will drag this down like. And we'll adjust the size a little bit after we. And similar to the other objects, we want this to sort of be like two-sided. It'll be easier. I'm gonna not do it this time. If you want everything to be just like super universal and easy to do, I find like this is like the exception where like I don't do that. Like, excuse me. So I made this little baseboard, and already it's like kind of cool. Like I mentioned, you can just reuse like textures, and it can look pretty nice. We're gonna be a little bit nicer about it though. So I went and unwrapped it, and we know it's the same width. We'll just scale it down to match the width a bit. We'll give it its own place up here. So now we have that little baseboard. For them, I generally like take off the collider. Ooh, I didn't name it yet. So in this case, if I feel like it was part of like the same set, I might name it like A2, or I might call it like wall base A1 or something like that. You'll have a better idea of like what you want in your own project. And you could keep the collision on it if you wanted, but it's so minor that like, and again, that's why we keep that pivot on that point, because it's going to make it way easier to like line that stuff up. And we might find that like that's like a little too small. At this point, we might start like walking around in the environment just to see how it feels to walk through it. That baseboard is too small. It might not be, because the walls are pretty big. Bye. Not, oh my god. I swear I saw her. She has a cast shadow, like a drop shadow, but like I swear it was on there. Hell yeah. Dude, this environment feels good. I was like all nervous at first, but it feels nice. Yeah. So let's go ahead. And you can keep the game running. This is another nice thing. We will grab the ground. And again, I'll drag. Bring it up here. Excuse me. Thank you. And we'll call it like, are they called baseboards? I don't even know, Don. We do want it kind of dark, so we might just do that and see what it does. And it matches the ground a little too much, right? So this is another point where like mess with colors and values to see like what we might want. Too bright. So I probably want like, I'm thinking darker. Sorry. I keep thinking those like Jakey videos, you know, like Nikki Jakey. He did this like bit about a dating app called I'm Thinking Arby's, and so now whenever I think of I'm Thinking, it's like, and it's making me laugh like every time. Ooh, that looks good. Oh my god, I love it. I was so bummed at first, y'all, but like look at these colors and like it feels good. So that's kind of cool. So for here, I was thinking black at first, but maybe like gray, like a light. You just gotta mess around and see like what looks good in the environment. And when I don't know what color to do, I just take away the color, and the gray generally like will like go with it. This won't look great, but it's too late. And our overlay is actually do that. Then we have that. It looked better with the violet. Might go ahead and keep that. Excuse me. This. That looks nice. Thanks, yeah, it's working good. The feeling I had in my head, I wanted a little bit different for this brick. I might test really quick. Just to see like, let's So boring. But... It's nice. That way we're not like using theirs or whatever. Y'all might hate me for doing that, but... Change it to bevel and emboss, even though I talked shit about it earlier. But like, I don't know, it kind of softens it. One of the things about bevel and emboss is like it can look so good, but it looks even more like machine made, I guess. It can look nice, but there's something really nice about just doing inner glow and like using white, and it gives you like a hard edge. We may not like this as much, but it's just closer to like, I don't know, it's gonna be easier to adjust like as we go forward. I don't know. I don't think it matters too much as we learn all the things we're gonna learn here. So with this like baseboard, can add like a little bit of pizzazz to it. Excuse me. Oh, we already have it there. And so generally I would do something like just like this, right? It's like really thick. Why did I make it so thick? So then we have like just a little bit of a pattern there. Another rule, like I generally don't add texture in any lighting, except for convex edges, I will add like highlights, and it goes a long ways. So, and if you make it just like really specular, like meaning like really, really thin, it looks really good. And you can kind of adjust from there, but starting out like really thin, really bright. Dude, I thought I was right on. Every time I do that, I'm like, and you can like export these UVs, but I generally like, it's not a character model, I generally don't need to. And then on that convex edge, oops, what happened? Excuse me. Why do I think I did that? Weird, I don't know what happened there. So you have that convex edge and it looks a lot nicer. Do something like that. Kind of cool. Brighten this now. All right. Kind of a bummer. I missed the old one, right? Like I lied. I don't know. If you're not familiar with game dev or art, this is basically what it is. I'll stick with that. We'll make it look nicer, but bleh, it's just not great. Just get the contrast like a little bit better. A lot of times when I'm doing like textures like this, I will control click, and then I'll do Hue, show, and you can get rid of the selection edges because it's such a complex one that it's just like creates tons of busyness and it's hard to see. And I go in, and sometimes I'll make like a custom brush that's like the shape if it's long. That's why I have just sort of a default square. Way I can jerk. Sort of match it up. And we could even do like, isn't there opacity jitter? I'll set it to like 50. So each time I click, give me a random opacity. It doesn't seem to be that random. And this is on a new layer. This will help us. This is particularly for like bricks and stuff. How long have we been streaming? Okay, I thought it was like a little bit longer than that, but it's still kind of long. Like I mentioned, this could be really long. Whenever I do light, I do it like way lighter, so like 10% opacity. And then I might like add a little variation to it. Because these are perfectly uniform, we can duplicate it. Flip it, move it. That'll give us more variety. A little bit too dark there. Another thing I do is, this is usually a little bit later on, but I should mention it. You know, the gradient map is defined by, you know, this mask here. And so when you paint onto it, the, excuse me. Oh, I still had the selection, but I hit the selection edges. There we go. Then we go and mask it all off like we wanted. But then I'll grab a brush. I'll usually grab like a cloud shape. Sometimes I'll do like angle jitter. Like it's set there already. Sometimes I don't though, because like sometimes I want to like hit the same spot a few times. And we remove that gradient map a bit. That way I have a little bit like nicer texture to stuff. Like that. Didn't save for some reason. Sweet. Maybe a little bit too much, so go back in. Trying to make this wall look a little bit nicer before we moved on, but move on. Generally, the next thing I do is like make a pillar, and this pillar can duplicated that. I almost always start with like the same wall texture. A, it'll look surprisingly good. B, you're just testing it out, right? What was C? A lot of times you want like a pillar that's made up of the wall, so to speak. That makes sense. Took away too many. What did I do? So this is just our starting point generally. But yeah, you'll be surprised at like how nice it is just to use like the same thing, and you can see it's not perfectly square. So what we need to do is like scale this properly. The pillars need to be perfectly square in order to get like the benefit of doing here. So it's one out, so we will just do one right. It'll be a little bit distorted in the UV, but we'll fix it. But you may not even be able to notice. So I don't care. So now we have this, and already it's like, isn't this like 20 out of 10? Like, it's like basically all you need. Like, it looks so good. Oops, I forgot to name it. We call this pillar A. Please. And then we'll do some like fancier pillars too. What the heck? And here we can sort of, on my pillars I usually just do like a box collider, even if they're not like full on boxes. And that's a little thin. But it might look nice. We'll see. Make that real quick, check the chat. You think about creating normal maps for these textures? I think you could super do it. I don't know if you're familiar, like, and I haven't really used it, but I've seen videos on like just these new apps that like, or programs or whatever you want to say, that can just take any image and do like a crazy good job of just like creating normal maps and like height maps from like just your texture. It's like wild. Sometimes you have to go in and just like click like where the highlights are or whatever. But it's like, you could definitely add normal maps. I also bake a lot of my lights, so it doesn't matter too much. It wouldn't be that hard to like just do like maybe like a height map, to just make it a little bit nicer. It just depends. Having a whole new like step like that for your whole environment could just be, it was like too much for me, so I didn't want to do it. I upped the resolution to show that stuff a little bit better. I could talk about this a little bit more. I have like a really moody game, right? And so mine, for the ambient occlusion, you can look up how it works, but it takes, generally, takes objects and whatever objects are near it, it'll sort of like accumulate like things that are like blocking light. And the distance will make it like so things farther away are blocking the light. So it basically makes your shadows bigger. You can have smaller shadows, but then you can increase the contrast. And so that's just like an option. I'll just show you with the smaller one. So there you can see that's like probably what more you would have in a typical game. Again, you just need to mess with that stuff to make it match your own game. Yeah, these are a little small. I might, again, this needs to scale uniformly. But we're gonna do, so we'll do scale, Shift Z, so that way it doesn't scale up, because we don't really want to scale it up. Maybe a little distorted now. This. Kind of made a mistake here. I'm gonna fix it. And it's more of a process mistake. We're gonna move that down there. I like to have all the wall stuff up top because we're gonna kind of like share this texture and like extend it. You'll see. Just do this. Actually, I shouldn't have done it like that. Try to make it bigger. Probably only need that much, so. Oops. This will make sense in a sec, sorry. The reason I do that is so we can kind of like share this with the pillar, but then have some like, we're gonna add some like convex edges. And if we wanted, we can even like mirror it, so like we only use like this much, but then we like we mirror it. I do that constantly. It can look pretty nice to not do it, so we can avoid it. But certain things, like a lot of the still seem a little bit too big. So yeah, it's a good point. I think Blizzard said that they beveled every corner in a building because otherwise it would just look too uncanny. And it doesn't surprise me. I think I remember reading, watching a similar video, or that heard that in one of their talks like a long time ago. Whenever you update your mesh, you'll have to rebake. So generally, like again, we keep the resolution down when we're like developing the assets. It's really dark in here. Again, it's gonna be like a scene dependent thing. This looks so nice. It's like so basic, but it looks nice. So we can carry on this sort of floorboard here for the base of our pillars. Or we can, and it'll look really good. We can create sort of the cap of the pillar, and that might work well enough. So we'll start with that. So we do like this. Here we're gonna get a little bit more fancy. So these pillar caps that why can't I grab that? Like I mentioned, need to extend above and below the pivot point. And they need to be wider than your pillar. You might find they need to be wider than other things. They're often like the fattest thing in your scene. We're gonna do that thing I talked about. This one. Probably gonna have similar trim and stuff to this. We'll move it down here. I forgot to put the top on, so I meant to do first. And you could start with the cube. I'm just being kind of silly, I guess. One should be at 0. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but what are you doing? I don't know. These are often fancier, so I'll give them a little bit more like texture space. Middle right. Also just to show how much you can like reuse the texture. I'll drop that in the scene and then make adjustments to it to see how well it can look. Good, it can look, I don't know what the right word is. For them too, I use a box collider. When you update your mesh, you generally have to. So here's one where I do, you know, it's pillar A2, because they often go with this, the pillar specifically. So name it that. Here. No, it's for everything. And it's kind of boring right now. But it adds a lot, honestly. Firstly, speaking of bevels, a little bit of a bevel like that. Just thinking, I mean, you can make these like fancy, like they don't have to be plain. Kind of nice. It's not quite like that good. This is like the shape they use in Trails of Cold Steel, like everywhere. I kind of like just this plain one. Taking our lighting really quick. And you can see like with these, once you get like more detailed, like the resolution is gonna really make a difference on your bake. But again, it's not an issue with the process. It's just because we use the low resolution, we can fix that. A lot of times on like the pillars, I'll do like with the overlay, we will trim outer glow of black. That'll be like a little ambient occlusion. And then inner glow again is to bevel our edges. We've been discussing. Oh my god, one please. Okay. Grab the dark color. Throw this on here. Just like that. Did we line it up? Almost, we were close. Oh yeah, I forgot I did it on both sides. Gonna easy. Because now we can cover it with the bevel. Oh, good. Again, you can like properly export your UVs, or you can be a criminal like me. Like, whatever works. It's just faster, you know. Looks nice. And we might try something like totally different, like maybe we want lighter. Ooh, it's like a different vibe, but it's nice. It's like, it's a little more like, I'm trying to find the right word. I don't know, corporate. But it looks good. And you know, doing new colors helps a lot here. So we might grab this, move that. I do gold trim everything, so why not now? Whoa. Oh, that black actually looked good. Hold up, hold up, hold up. Hold up. Yeah, it looks kind of nice. You've probably seen that look. This is kind of like, I don't know, not corporate, but has a similar vibe. I'll usually do that. Often I will make a few pillars. I didn't do it in this environment, I didn't need it. But a few of these sort of like pillars that are made out of the wall texture, and they, but like do like more sizes too. Sometimes you can just get away with, it doesn't look terrible. It's a little whack with these bricks, but honestly, like, you can just do it. Like if that was textured a little bit nicer, it would be fine. And similarly, you want to bevel those edges. Here's where not exporting your UVs might look like totally whack, like be a minor nightmare, but we're pretty close. Proud of myself for doing it, not looking. I know I said that earlier, but I am just that proud, I guess. Let's see, that is very light. Oops. So I kind of hate how desaturated this got. It happens a lot, like as I develop an environment, I almost always like really like increase the saturation. Usually ends up looking nicer, and part of it is because of the settings. Oh, that yellow looks nice. The light map settings are like lightening it and like they're doing things to it, so don't feel that bad. So often from what I do there is make sort of a horizontal trim. And the horizontal trim, like I mentioned, can do, it can be trim against the wall, it can be trim here, which you can use for railing and stuff. Isn't like super noticeable. We'll do like a nicer looking railing than this like industrial looking one. And then we can also use it up here. This is sort of a utility tunnel type area, so like our trim, we're gonna make it look a little bit different. So let's do that. We will copy this baseboard since it's like really similar. And you kind of have to decide, you may want it like thicker than your pillars, but like thinner than the caps here. I don't do that, but I feel like I've done that on like a particular environment. Not wrap that. There's space down here with. And same thing, we need it to go above and below this edge here. We need to raise this up a little bit, but we want it to fit inside this cap, so it needs to be less than that. So on the bottom, we have to raise it a bit. So when we're making our like trim here, we find that like that's so thin, I don't like it, or whatever. You may have to adjust your caps and pillars and things like that, which is fine. But like again, I keep bringing up the game. If you look at like Trails of Cold Steel, you'll find like their caps are like giant, and that's kind of the reason why. Is because like if you want like a nicer trim here, or you know a bigger trim, not necessarily nicer. You know it hides behind the pillar, so it's not like the worst. But you know it looks nicer if this extended down too. And you could make like an alternate piece, but then it's like, then we're in that zone where we're just making all these like new assets, and it's like, that's not the life I want to lead. Like, we want ease of use. You can do something like that. That's pretty ugly, but kind of this caps top. Just something to keep in mind. We'll just keep it thin for now. Excuse me. I often like delete the bottom. and then just like put it on the bottom. It's just like the same, right? Like, it doesn't need to be different. Because a lot of this stuff's just going to be like an ambient occlusion. It's going to be occluded. So then we save texture space, which is nice. And it's just less work. Honestly, that's the main thing. Like, resources at this sort of like, you know, polygonal level, development level is like not a big deal. So more of that. Get the name in. I usually call it just trim. Sometimes I'll call it specifically wall trim. Sometimes I'll just call it trim, depending on the environment. Like I mentioned, this sounds like a lot of character. Maybe I should. Well, for sure I'll load up the other levels, but it'll illustrate that better. What's going on, friend? Oh, my bad. Yeah, I don't like that. How dare you? Sorry, I'm not narrating all this. I just don't have it in me. You can check my other videos where I narrate like everything I do when I'm modeling. And so, like I mentioned, remove this box collider and then re-add it. So in Unity, the box colliders will like conform to like the bounds of the mesh as best as it can. You can see here, this is one of the reasons, like, and I knew it when I was like adding them, but you should sort of stay on these powers of 2. If you have like a particular environment where like having this in the middle like would look better, like you just have to do it, then you can scale these. And this is also another good reason to let's say this doesn't go all the way across, like we need it to stop here, to show how scaling from this pivot point is just way easier like during development. Really, we don't want. And another thing that I do is like in Unity, I'll put my whole stage parented to a single object. It's just helpful so you can like duplicate and scale the whole stage if you make a huge mistake like I did. Yeah, just something to consider. I just wanted to see this unbaked. If you can also delete and undo, and then that will like it's not, I know it's like not a very good best practices sort of thing, but not the worst thing. It won't save the light map when you delete, so just be careful about that. So now I can talk about how, so there's 3 options for doing baseboards. You can do these like literal ones. You can texture it in, which is, I do sometimes. It can look kind of bad if you have like tall walls, like if you're tiling it up, but it looks pretty good. So it can like save you a lot of work. You may prefer that. My voice is so gravelly right now. Oops. What am I doing? This. On that. Desaturate it. I'll drop it down, that way it has that little edge. And that can look pretty good. Probably want to go darker, but Looks pretty nice already. Right, but then you run into this. If you had like a fatter trim, you could hide that, or if you just don't care, it's just something to keep in mind. And like I mentioned, I do it in some of my environments where it doesn't matter. Others I'll do like the baseboard. And then, again, the Trails of Cold Steel version is to do this. And so you like multi-purpose those things. And already that looks pretty good, right? And so you might find that, hey, I wish it looked a little bit better on the floor part. So I might make it a little bit bigger in response to that. Move this. Moving its object position won't mess it up, right? Because its origin is the same. This is just sort of how it's kept inside of Blender. We can move that and it won't affect those. Yeah, maybe we like that. Or maybe that was actually, we didn't like it. But maybe we want it to stick out more. So again, these need to stay uniform in certain directions, and I fudging failed at it. Oh, I forgot to, what did I do? I don't know what I did there, but it's fine. I like that better. Something to think about. Usually on the trim and like the caps, I get like really fancy. Oh, I closed that out. So like in this sort of like industrial, like waterworks area, you know, I get like fancy on the edges here. Added this like vent, I guess. Like none of this is like accurate. It doesn't like, I don't know what it does, right? But it evokes that like feeling. But what I'm getting at is like in your texture, you can kind of make it sort of like multi-purpose. So right there. About right? Nope. Oh my gosh. So you can have that like little crack there if you think that's okay. Again, like this might live on the edge of your environments as well. So as we like progress along in development, do this. Environment is so dark. We have to like go in and change that for sure. And I usually do like a railing, and we'll get to that here in a sec. But it's just another thing to keep in mind just when you're designing it. If you want one that's like so like all utility, I can't think of the word. Multi-purpose. And again, I do this outer glow if I want to do like a little bit of like a trim. Black outer glow for ambient occlusion and white inner glow for the convex edges. Thick. Like that. And you might find it looks nice here, but looks hideous other places. It's, you know, up to you. Like I mentioned a lot of times on these, I will get kind of fancy. I'll do like a new layer and really horizontal shapes, like just tilings that just sort of go across like this look surprisingly good. Here you don't really notice it, although it can be kind of nice to like create like a little edge there like we did. That doesn't look too good. I keep saying like I said, I might get a little more fancy. And you know, paint in some shapes like flowers, or actually like deleting it, but my game is filled with lots of like floral shapes and we'll go in and do a nicer job, you know, if we were really clean up the shapes. And you know, you can go online and go, you know, download free floral vector and just like drop it in here and hit erase over it, and you'll have like, you know, it's kind of nice. It's like way too fat, which is fine. You can just scale it. Something like that. That's pretty ugly, but it's not the worst. And my levels on this, the lighting on the textures are really bad right now. Bake this really quick. Let's see how contrasty that is. Good for my game, not good for every game. Let's see, I have the wrong box collider on there. It's a really nice feature of Unity that they do that. And similarly, we just block these all out here. And from here, it generally, and depends on the environment. I didn't bother with it in this environment because it didn't really have too many. Yeah, it's dope. Falcom's sweet. I didn't do it too much in this environment, but I can't think of an environment where I did do it. So anyway, we'll figure it out though. So we'll Shift D that. We could even leave it up here. What we're doing now is like making some railing. Usually what that is I have this sort of like base like railing thing right here, and we'll use these like, you know, the caps on the base there, and we don't necessarily have to. You could make a whole new, but again, we're trying to like reduce the amount of work that we do. Over. Normally we'd be doing like a nicer job of like the actual assets we're making. So that's like railing A1, and then we duplicate that, and remember where we have room exactly. Oh, I didn't make it wide enough. Wow, I did like a really bad job of the. So railing is like a little bit more of a like intimate object. I don't know. It's like one that you'll see more up close, and like you might need like a smaller sort of setting. Like finer, I guess. Like finer, not in like fancier, but like in smaller. And so we might want something that isn't our sort of baseline like width. I guess I didn't mention that too much, like how everything, you know, this is like 1 by 1, and we follow that like strictly powers of 2. So we can do like exactly half of that. That's what we're doing for the railing here. Here, you go down here. You do like A2. And we have the space anyway, so why not give this like a tiny bevel? You also might find that, which I found, is that in certain environments, you may have, whenever you have this, you always have this. So you could just make it like an alternate that is just these two together, like here in Blender. Just something to keep in mind. So this is telling me I really don't like where this cap is like sitting, so I'm gonna like bring that down. And that messed up the colliders on every single one of these, so something important to keep in mind before you actually like start building. Some of these probably don't even need colliders, but and you can see something kind of funny here. This material is has a cutout aspect to it, so the alpha will actually just cut out, so you can use that for like, you know, more finer mesh fences. It's because I duplicated the layer and had that old alpha on here from a different texture. So I actually don't want that for that railing. We're gonna have like a thicker railing. Box collider. These are really fine or blocky objects, so box collider is fine. You could do mesh collider though. It's a lot more precise. I don't know what the word is. Yeah, then we have this railing, like a little thinner than that. We have that railing, which is pretty cool. You can also see that that like baseboard thing will apply here too. So you might need to rework the texture a little bit to you know, accommodate all your different spots. You know, use cases. You can see that actually have a tag for ignoring the camera, or the camera to ignore it, but it doesn't work. It only works because I'm bad at programming, I guess. But you can do ignore raycast, just in case that's usually like what it will do. Like if you are using like someone else's code that you downloaded or something for your camera. so that way it like works here, and it won't hide you here until it like hits the wall, you know, it's occluded by the wall. So it's nice to have for objects like that. And then I often do a second smaller pillar. So we will do, we'll just add a cube. And this one is smaller than like railing cap. And it sort of like goes with the railing. Put it up at 1. So then we have like something like this, and that's a little fat, so. Wrap it. And like I mentioned, if we wanted to be kind of lazy about it, for this kind of like railing one, like I don't know if a brick would really be appropriate. It just probably wouldn't look very good. We should probably put her in here or something. I think it's nice. I find it helpful. Keep a lot of my pillars sort of in the same spot. And that's just going to come down to like what you like in the end. I am going to cheat here. Do that mirroring thing I talked about. Sometimes I'll call it railing, like I'll keep it as part of like the railing crew, or I might do it as part of the pillar crew, and that would be B1. The reason is because you can use it sort of in this context, right? Actually, it'll make more sense if I do it in the scene. That, change the mesh, and it was cut, pillar, something, and what is this one? All this time, remove, or you know, re-add the component, that way it just generates it. Something like this. But also, can be nice to use it like this. So now you can have like something a little more repetitive that isn't as extreme and like doesn't like blow out your scene by having just all this like crazy detail. And so you might find like maybe it should be a little bit thicker. Maybe it doesn't quite look as good for the on the railing, but certainly looks really nice like here now or whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do a slightly nicer bake. Forgot to mention the light map size. I found that 512 works great. It's actually a lot faster. And like that other like bigger scene I had, it had 9 5x12, 512 by 512 light map textures, and it was like 3 megs. So like that's great. This might take a minute. I just want to see how everything's like shaping out. Struggle is pretty good. Oh, I don't mind. Yeah, and I thought about ways to like, generate them. And honestly, again, like RPG Maker, if you were like strict about how you built your textures and where you like, put your UVs for all your objects, you can like swap out um, palettes like kind of do that anyway, but it would just be like a single step rather than having to replace like the mesh and the material. Um, but then, yeah, you could get like more automated where you have just like texture sets and like I was working with a thing where you would just draw out like cubes, you'd like block out a whole level, and then it would like lay all this stuff out. It worked technically, but it's like you said, I found that in the end, just like doing it like this, I'm not saying that isn't possible and great, but in the end, I found that like just doing it is like good. Yeah. So let's just do something with our floor really quick because we don't have anything. I want to mention that same with those big pillars. Usually do like a cap for it too. You can see that looks really nice, right? Because that's smaller, you get like a different interaction with the geometry, which is really cool. But let's say you didn't like it, you can do like another cap, like design another one. And I often do this, but I also often just do this. It might look kind of bad. That looks very bad, but sometimes it looks great, so just something to keep in mind. But I don't mind making a new one. You can even make a new one and use this same texture, right? We haven't even textured that yet, but another thing you can do. Process already looks fast. Yeah, I think it is. Like this environment, like, yeah, just like, especially considering, like, I don't know if it's like in the grand scheme of things fast, but what I have put up with in the past, it's like, how did I live like that? Like, so yeah, where were we? Oh yeah. So I don't know. I was thinking like we could do like a flagstone. I'm thinking just like I have a lot of environments that are sort of like this already, but I don't know, the reason I keep doing it is because it looks good. Just sort of do an off center. And I make it like a literal tile. So I'll like block out the edges here. That way it can just easily tile. Not too much fuss here. I have to adjust the UVs a little bit. I can just make this thicker. Pretty nice. There's an edge that's not inbound still. Cheat a tiny bit, don't tell my mom. That doesn't look super amazing. I just don't know what I want to do. Like, and I've been putting off this video for like ever, so it's a little too like, I don't know what I'm doing. Outdoor tile. Yeah, something like that. This or this. This could be cool. Thank you, Wayfair. Thank you. See how good at game development we are? Scale it up and we don't even care, dude. And we'll adjust our levels because look how bright that is. I don't think so, friend. Ooh, nice. Kind of nice. It's not perfect, but mention that we can go over. And this one is like faster. Doing it really quick. Darks really need to like better. It's a little bright. Part of it's the gradient map. Some we'll have to adjust. Dude, what's it doing? Okay. I don't know. Photoshop got angry. That's okay. I think what we need in our life is how that works, but kind of whack. No, that looks sick. Cool. So yeah. The way I did that was kind of stupid, but all in one texture. Drop the white out there, but I want more contrast. It'll look gross with it that thick, but ooh. See, you don't even have to be good anymore. Like you just steal. Don't tell anybody. Keep making that joke. It's not funny anymore. That looks like really nice, right? Like fair use, baby. I don't know if that's actually fair use. So, legitimately, like either just trace it, or you know, find a free texture. I just found one that looked nice. Finding a texture like this would be pretty easy. This looks nice, so. Yeah. I don't know what that face means, but hello. I'm too old to like. I won't finish that joke. It wasn't offensive, it just wasn't very good. Something I often do. It depends on the environment, but like I will have done this the right way from to begin with. A stitch in time, dudes. I'll like duplicate these cracks, and beneath it, take down the fill. I'll get rid of that outer glow. Rephrase that. Just do outer glow, but make it black. And this is really going to depend on the environment, but I sort of make it like smoky a little bit. Sometimes I'll just do that and texture it by hand. But I'll do a bit of sort of like wherever there's a crack, there's sort of like some grime coming out. Like just it looks nice. Down a little bit. Some environments it doesn't look very good. There, that's like a little too much. You can see when it's actually in the environment. Maybe we don't want that. But maybe we could only have it on the edges. We would do a better job of cleaning this up normally, but do it this way. I hope what I'm doing makes sense here. You can see it creates like a stronger grid there, so maybe you don't like that either. Or you might just want to do this. And that grid's still going to be there, but it'll be like on the cracks. So maybe you like that. I use it a lot in this environment. I just wanted to show it really quick. Like along here, like in these cracks. It particularly looks good on concrete specifically. I just don't know if that's like a behavior of concrete. So that's, I don't know, why go for it. Let's see. Could do lights. I forgot where I was going. I'm getting kind of tired. It might be better just to like load a scene up. When I'm doing lights, I often, honestly, in this project, I have ended up using these little lights right here for basically every stage. I'll make like minor adjustments, but isn't quite what you would want for an environment like this. Let's bring one out then. Okay. We have I forgot what I named these. Okay, yeah, this one. So one of the main lights you'll use, I mean, it kind of depends on your game, right? But is spotlights, and they seem kind of whack at first, like they seem almost like gimmicky and like kind of bad looking. But you can do a lot of good work. I have like a little bit of a volumetric like effect on it. That's like just something I did. And then here is where you really want to start thinking about like what you want. Or maybe not here. I phrase that weird, but there's three like major things that can like totally change the character of an environment without like redoing the textures. And it might seem obvious, but it's good to keep them in mind. We have our fog color. So an environment like this, like the first one that comes to mind is, we've been using that violet a lot, so maybe the violet. It's kind of pretty. If you want it stylized like Final Fantasy 12, like I do, use some pretty saturated stuff. Like some of their environments are like looking like that, and you know, some that forest area, the Salika Wood or whatever. That going on. But it creates a lot of character. And then you also have your ambient light, which I don't even use. I don't do like, it didn't look very good whenever I tried to do like more like standard type lighting that you might learn. The fog settings. Exponential squared is generally the best, so it's like, it's sort of like a sharp fall off. So it's pretty thick in the back, and then there's like a sharp fall off. And then your like light colors. There's like so many things on the list of what I want to talk about in this video, but I'm kind of tired, so I'm trying to wrap up like the main points, and then if there's other things, address that. Generally, like the colors you'd see in real life look the best. But you never know, you know. When you bake it, it gets a lot more saturated. I don't know if it's because of the settings I use, but definitely do be happening. So we have our intensity. I'm going to keep that lower and then increase the range. Just the spot width here. We can cheat a little. Even though this is going straight down like this in the scene, maybe we just want to light out here a little bit. Just something to keep in mind. I do it a lot with these like ground, like these floor ones, like they point in like kind of weird directions just because it makes the scene look nicer. Oh, cool. Yeah, this will go up on YouTube anyway, so. But do ask questions. You can see this scene has like a whole new character to it now. It's nice. Like just from the fog, but then we have the lights too. So let's go ahead and just run around in here and see how it feels. Those lights are pretty high up. We may not love that for the color, right? Like way in the background. But if our whole scene, like if our environment is taken up, like is blocking it like that far out, then it'll be fine. But like, oops, maybe more like that. Similar color, but the darker is nicer. Like I mentioned, like, you know, the lighter colors can look nice too. It was a different environment, but my game's dark, so that going on. So a lot of times, like lens flares will just inherit the color from the light, which is like what you want, but we are living in a different world. We did these sort of like custom ones. And so, you know, the effects of on the lights can add a lot. Just from like having the same environment, you might find that you'll actually want to maybe like desaturate some of your environment. You'll go back and forth. I know maybe that seems obvious, but just don't get frustrated, I guess. That floor looks good. Who designed that? Was it Wayfair.com? Let's see. I guess I will look at our list here. Covered the methodology, the models. Oh yeah, we could do an arch. Arches are really important. They just add a ton of stuff, so. Shift add, mesh. We add like a circle. We rotate it up. And you want it to fit inside your pillar. So it's similar to the pillar, but I usually make it a little bit smaller. So we'll do the fat one first, and then often what I do is like take this exact mesh and just scale it, but scale it in a way that it doesn't look scaled, if that makes sense, to work with the smaller pillars. So again, we want the pivot to be this part of the circle, like on the edge here. These. And we want it to have a thickness, so put it like right here, maybe. That seems good. From there, grab that and I extrude out this way. And then from here. And I don't know if this is good, but I do it. Extrude out this way, and then up. And so maybe that like isn't the ideal shape that we want. Just thinking. Kind of depends on the environment. Sometimes like the main arch I do is like a too wide one. But sometimes like this is enough. We'll do the smaller one. One degree. It feels colder. I know it's already really cold, but like, oh my god, it's so fudging cold here. Maybe a little bit of a weird shape. We might have to readjust it. Put it out on the top as well. Generally, a lot of times, like you don't want these exposed areas, but if you know for sure it'll never be like exposed, then you don't have to bother. I do find that putting the top on these, I used to not, but putting the top on it just it helps a lot. So what I do then is do this and then mark scene and unwrap it. And then we have a few options. One, like I always say, is like we can just reuse this. The thing I just mentioned where this is exposed, we can use something we've already textured, like we can move this somewhere else. But a lot of times we can just like do this. It doesn't need to look great, but you just kind of need something on there because it's usually occluded by a bunch of stuff. So just having like a little bit of something on there helps a lot. And this is just a start. Well, I don't know, I'm getting pretty tired, unfortunately. To texture out something else specifically, but make something nicer. But usually the underside of an arch is a really nice place to do some like fancy like trim and stuff. But we can always just do this. And then excuse me. And we have an arch. And see, those are really tiny. So that's actually kind of good. So we can use less texture space and try and match it up a little bit better. Really, dude? I didn't think it was that big, but so we'll do that real quick. Drop it in the scene and show you how we can use those. Thanks, looking good, thank you. To the chatter. Tutorial Arch 81. And it might seem obvious, but this is one where we use the mesh collider. Because it's, excuse me. What I just did. and you'll see a few things. You may want to make it thinner than the trim, or you may want to make your trim like thicker. Obviously, in some cases, you could just scale it out, but we're trying to avoid that kind of behavior. You also see that it kind of looks bad with that on top of it. It goes up too high. So we probably want to adjust that for sure. That one is for certain, I would say. We're gonna kind of lose the shape of our arch, but hopefully it'll look okay. The texture's gonna be effed up, but we'll fix it. Just thinking here. We'll still need to unwrap it. But let's do that for now. That already looks kind of neat. I really like this like trim on the edge. So like, well, it probably won't even show up. I was thinking like to do this, I can steal that edge right there, right? And that looks really nice. But it's usually going to be like capped off by these pillars that not only is it capped off by the pillars, but it's the exact same texture, so that's fine. We don't need that. You peas. Why does it do that? Why? You didn't before. What's your problem? It's not a big deal, but now it's not perfect. I may be scaling both of these. My bad, my bad, my bad. And you can do like a mirror modifier instead of doing all this nonsense, but I'm unlazy? I don't know. Maybe it's bad. Yeah, maybe not quite much to look at yet. But so yeah, should we make it thinner? I mean, that's the easy way. It's nice to have these like big fat arches, but that sounded looter than I thought it would. We'll make it so the trim goes up there. A little whack looking. You'd want to make some adjustments to make sure it like suits you better. Doing a quick bake here. So you can see that looks pretty nice. Baking that stuff in there. You can use them for like archways, and you can like use them there. These caps are really nice. it can be nice to be used here as well. I didn't line that up very well. That's another thing to keep in mind. We probably adjust this a little bit more so that it interacts with these a little bit better. Yeah, and like I mentioned, sometimes I do like a smaller one, but you can also just use a care, which can be really nice looking. That might be a little bit too low, but we'll check in the scene here. Yeah, that's cool, right? And this is like a really, like, the textures aren't great and stuff like that, but arches are dope. Like, just helps a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and review this really quick. I do a follow-up video on just to show more stuff to make, how to design the levels a little bit, but really everything I've covered, like, is all you need. Like, everything else is just your artistic endeavor and style and things like that. Chat really quick, check the... maybe I'll just do like a paste bin and show this. There's some stuff I could go over, like the shaders and things like that. See, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in here. But I will cover all the questions that were asked. I asked everyone to ask some questions on Twitter if they had any. The lighting setup, like I mentioned, mostly just use these. I will go ahead and load some other scenes. Plus, it'll give us a better idea of like what you can see, like, or what you can achieve. This is a good example. So I have all these little lights. These ones are point. Sometimes these little ones I want to be spot. These are point. These are point as well. In other environments, they are spot. I used more spotlights in the sort of like city streets area that I showed earlier. For a lot of these, I did like point. You just kind of have to decide like what looks good for you. And these are all baked. But I also do invisible point lights, and I usually set them to white. Like, I don't necessarily want atmosphere for them, I just want to brighten the scene. And then like the baking. Oh, and I meant to bake a scene back there to show that like when you bake, it really saturates any color that you added. Kind of hard to tell, but you can kind of see the turquoise in here. These are blue lights. But oh, they're pretty blue. Kind of light, you know? But when you're setting it in the scene, it'll look one way, and then when you bake, depending on your settings, it can kind of saturate them. Yeah, it's simpler than it looks. I mean, that's why I really like this. A lot of people ask these like technical questions, and it's like, I don't know, it's forward rendering, and a lot of these lights, if I made them a little bit smaller, I could probably make them real time. That way they're not covering too much. They're not doubling up on geometry. Like, the performance hit starts to happen when, well, generally, when too many lights are hitting one object. I don't know if y'all seen that meme. It was a really popular meme because it's good, where it's like Mufasa and Simba are looking over the savannah. And Mufasa's like, everything the light touches gets rendered twice. And I don't know, it's really good. It's a funny joke, and it's true. So when you use more expensive colliders, it depends. Like, in some environments, like let's say this trim here, it's like combined with this like railing. and I'll just throw a mesh collider on it. I don't care, and it's generally fine. It's a bad idea, but like if you don't have a performance hit, it's okay. But I was like, hey, it might matter. So in this scene, it's actually like a two-part object. And so on the base here, I do the mesh collider. It's a simple mesh, but I still use it because it has that bevel, and it was just, I was getting weird interactions in the game, so I wanted that bevel there. And then this, I just did a box collider. Even though this is like a complex mesh, I didn't want complex interaction. I just want this to be like a barrier. I haven't set them up in this stage, but like, unfortunately, I couldn't find, or I don't want to do like water interactions, so you can't really go past these areas. And I just use invisible box colliders. Inspiration. I meant to cover this like a little bit better, but let's see. I'm trying to remember, I don't want to leave something out because I had a nice little write up for how I do it. Shoot, I can't find it. But, and I know I covered it earlier in the stream, but something from real life or from a game that makes me feel something. And I know that sounds lame, but like, or like maybe too wishy-washy, but it's more important than something that looks cool. Like, obviously you see something, it's like, oh, that looks cool, right? But it's that emotional reaction. And so, like, I like to give the example of like Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. They have a lot of sort of like, quote unquote, like plain like rooms and environments, but they still evoke this like really strong feeling. It's hard to explain, but really focus on those like feelings and textures. I love Final Fantasy 12, so everything's like really overwrought and decorative. I like mixing that with like more modern touches and stuff. Like I really like this environment because of that. You can get inspired by just like a weird intersection, like in the city that you live in, or maybe a weird patch of land there, or a interesting building, or just the light hits a building in a certain way, and you're like, wow, I want to do that, and just like really hold on to those feelings. Um, any other like technical stuff, like anyone can look up a Gothic building and model it. Like you can find a Gothic church and spend a ton of time and like model it, and it'll look like a Gothic church. But will it give you that same feeling that you might feel in like Dark Souls 3? That's a game where it's very beautiful, but it also has a lot of strong feelings. And it's just important to hold on to those feelings. And that inspiration can come from anywhere. You just have to find it in your own heart. Looks good. Thank you. Let's see. Vertex colors are a huge part. What decisions are done to handle the lighting? Again, I guess I didn't cover it too much, but I'll make some like different sconces, like base lamps. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name. Load another stage. I don't remember. Some of these are ancient. They're so old. Is this it? That might be it. Quite be it, but let's see. No, that's a different environment. Oh, that's the first one. That's like the... Sorry for that. I just remember the name. And honestly, I think the name is just probably something like this, like stage 1. Like, it would have been a good example for the lighting, but we can use this. Basically, you know, where necessary, I add like these. Really do wish I could remember the name of that other one. And then out here, you know, I use these like floor lamps instead. I basically just add them where I think they're pretty, and just make sure when they're used repetitively that they light the scene in an interesting way. And then like the lighting, you know, set ambient occlusion, you have max distance, but then you have like the indirect contribution. As you crank that up, it means sort of like the bounce light in a sense is like will illuminate it better. And then again, like those invisible point lights, I use that right here, just a big old point light in here, just to like boost the scene a little bit. If you try it and you have trouble, just ask me again and we can just like run through it. Unfortunately, it really is just like some lights in the scene and see if they look good, and hopefully they do. Covered that. Thank you for the compliments that everyone wrote. VFX process. So I find it interesting, and I know this is my fault. I have a YouTube channel, and this will go up on YouTube, and I have tons of my VFX tutorials on there. I have plenty of videos coming up in the future too. Yeah, so I think that's all the questions. If there's any in chat, looks good, thank you. I'm getting like really tired, like it's like I haven't spoken in forever, like just talking is like exhausting me. Sorry for saying so much, but thank you all for coming. Let's real quick. Scene back up and just take a glance. What we made looks nice. The scene I was gonna bring up that I couldn't find is similar to this. It's like a brown brick and has like black trim, but it has really nice sort of like chandeliers. It's like a subway station. It would have been nice to show, but and it sort of has some like fanciness to it. This looks pretty rough, but you know, you just go in and like make it fancier. Let's do take a glance at this. Some other things interest you. So this is like the first area in the game. Very exact same design process. Wanted it a little more spooky, so I have this like dark blue going on with like really orange lights. Basically same setup. I just, you know, build the environment out differently. These are the caps. My base pillar is really skinny. That sort of creates its own kind of character. And we have that trim, right? This trim I hate, but I couldn't make a better one, and I sort of forgot about it, so that's good enough, and we're keeping it. The wall, you know, I just took a brick wall and made it kind of fancy and dilapidated. Did some like broken tiles and stuff. I didn't talk about the floor trim much, or we didn't get into it. I just covered it technically in the beginning of the video. Did just like a ground texture and a railroad. Again, I didn't use a point light here. I just didn't have a ceiling. I didn't have a ceiling, so it's like I didn't have to like a bunch of this wasn't occluded, so it didn't get very dark. I just laid the lights here. Lights along the tracks and stuff. An inside area here. Same thing. And I want it to be really dark, so I didn't like illuminate it more. It's supposed to be dark. Yeah. I think that's it. It just takes work. You know, the one that we made is pretty rudimentary. Just I hope that seeing those scenes that I made, I'll load the other one too. you know, if you like what you see, that what we covered today is basically it. Like there's not much else. It's just, you know, you can look at the environment. Oh yeah, this place is cool. We start, there's like a subway area I have right here, and then it's like leaving the subway area, and then we're like in the inner city here, the undercity. But for this one, you know, I went a little bit fancier. I did this black brick, did much fancier trim and stuff. Hopefully this one, you know, conveys that like you can do some cool stuff. Yeah, especially do the baking, get some cool like gothic looking things like that. Pretty dark too. Use a really similar color to the railway station, but I made it a little bit more white rather than like an orange. It's still warm. It's like yellowy orange, but and I did like a lighter fog. It gave it like a lot of character. So even though this is sort of like a dark area, it looked really good with this like lighter fog. Again, just something to keep in mind. I did like 2 trims for this area. There's that like typical one that I talked about, but then there's like an alternate one. It's like fancy. Another thing you could do. Again, it's mainly about having a wall, having a floor, having a pillar, and then having a cap. Like this. Duplicate it to show it. So same thing, but you know, actually modeled it out, made it look nice. And then from there, you know, this is what I talked about where I had that like main pillar and then made a smaller one. Same thing with the cap. And then did like a cutout texture. I'm gonna do a video on how to do these cutout textures because I think they're really nice. They're really fast. And they look fancy. This area is kind of dark, so you can't see, but like that. Yeah, and then I just, you know, I bake the scene and then I add the lights. I generally just add them where I think would be cool and to direct the player. You know, we start in here, and so, you know, the lights are just right there, and so it's like, okay, I'm gonna go with this lamp. And then, oh no, a bunch of robots fight us. And then, you know, there's a light over here. And there's really only one way to go anyway, but, you know, you should use it to illuminate and also just direct the player. And that's stuff you hear in a lot of, you know, game design videos. So, or, you know, specifically like level design videos. Looks nice, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And that's kind of like the point, like it is very achievable. Definitely just check out Trails of Cold Steel. Obviously Final Fantasy 12 and Breath of Fire 5 are good ones. But the methodology is the one that really helps me. If I didn't cover any of these topics very well, or you feel like you're struggling to create like a good texture, just let me know. The process I used today is basically how I made this. It's how I made all those other brick textures. You just have to work at it a little bit. And depending on the color, there's going to be different things you might struggle with, but please contact me. You know, I like to help out. I think that's it. Thank you all for joining me. One last time. If you need help, just reach out. I like to help. And if you have any questions, ask on Twitter or email. And that like final plug, I hate to say it, but again, like from that other video, Patreon helps out a ton. So my mission for this stuff to always be free, to provide free help as well if people need it. If you need like extended help like on a project, then it'd be something else. But you know, Princess Kiss Dev is my Twitter, or excuse me, well, that is my Twitter, but it's also my Patreon. So if you feel like you want to support that, go ahead. Thank you all so much, and take care.